Hi, nice to be back. Glad you're here watching me. Um, I am going to talk about a few things that I've already talked about because I was informed that there's a few questions that I didn't answer. Um, so I'll try to answer some of those. Um, First of all, I will start with the uh, contracts. Before we're born, we determine what it is that we need to work on when we come here to Earth. And for some people, we have separation issues. For others, it's detachment issues. For others, it's um, we want to control everything. For others, it's uh, fear of being alone and being abandoned and being abused, or just fear itself. Um, so our souls spend time recognizing that we need to work on those things. And in order to work on those things, many of us come here to Earth because it's difficult. It Earth is not an easy place to live. It's in fact seen by God and the angels and Jesus as one of the most brutal places to live, but where we can learn the biggest lessons in the least amount of time. So we make out our plans and we sign contracts with other people, other souls, I should say. And like in my life, I needed to work on detachment, um, the law of detachment, detachment issues, um, learning that I can't control other people, learning that I am on my own, that I need to stand on my own and be strong in myself, and to honor the fact that other people have the right to make decisions, especially when they don't agree with the decisions that I wish they would make. um, and that was my karma that I had to come here to learn. Um, so I chose to be born to the family I was born into. I chose a mother who was bipolar and narcissistic and possibly other things. And I also chose a daughter who had exactly the same things. Um, my first husband was a major narcissist, an alcoholic, very abusive. Um, so I I chose a father who, rather than sticking up for me, felt it was more important to be with his family, even though he was not um, loving, kind, or caring, or even active with his family, um, because my mother ordered him not to be, and he chose to listen to her. Um, so my I have a older sister who is 6 years older than myself, and a brother who is 4 years younger than myself. My sister, I saw her now and then, but I never really knew her. Um, she, by the time I was old enough to realize what was going on, like 4, 3, 4, um, she already had friends and was leaving the house all the time. She was never home. Um, my brother, he had epilepsy. My mother thought he had mental illness like she did. So she would hide him in her bedroom when he would, grab his ears and be upset that he was having a seizure. It's called focal sensory seizure. And my mother had no idea what it was, and she thought it was mental illness, and she hit him and babied him. So I was the one left to be her scapegoat, to be abused, to be picked on all the time. Um, I never had love or kindness in my early life, except for my father until I was 4, and my mother put an end to that. My um, classmates were brutal to me. The teachers were indifferent, they just didn't care. Um, so I did have one person, or I thought I did, um, my godmother, my aunt, who I thought the world of, and I would occasionally go there and stay with them. But one day, I was about 5 or 6 years old, I mentioned to her that I was being abused, and rather than talking to me about it or doing anything about it, she just took me by the shoulders and said, Candy, you can't say that stuff. You can't say that here. Um, you know, we don't talk bad about our mom and dad, and you can't talk like that here. And the woman was a teacher. I mean, come on. But that was the kind of help that I got, and I didn't know back then that these people had all signed contracts to not support me. But because I wasn't supported by anyone here from earth, I was supported by the angels. I was supported by Jesus. I was supported by God. Um, they sometimes would make themselves seen to me. Sometimes I could hear them, but most of the time I could just feel them, and I knew that they were there. Um, so if I had had parents that were supportive and people who were loving to me, I quite probably would not have had contact with the angels and God and Jesus like I did. Um, and I have been told by the angels, God and Jesus, that the people who were the most hateful to me are the ones who loved me the most, because they had a really hard job to do. Most souls are not hateful and brutal like that unless they've signed a contract and have come in for a specific reason to impact another person's life in a way that they can learn the lessons that they need to learn. So I realized that my um, mother and my daughter and my father, actually, I need to be grateful to them, and especially to my mother. Um, she was probably the most brutal, but I realized a few years ago that she believes in hell. Now, I'll tell you right now that there really isn't a hell. We manifest and create things for ourselves. And unless we personally create a hell for ourselves, there is no hell. Well, my mother, a few years ago, um, said that she needed a bed. So we took a bed to her, and this is a 200-mile ride one way. So we went there, um, and she confronted me and asked me what it was. Now I know it's because I had said something to my daughter, and my daughter said something to my mother about the abuse and the mistreatment. And so my mother confronted me and asked me what it was that she had done to me throughout my lifetime and why I thought that she wasn't a very good mother. And I tried to get out of having that conversation because I felt like it was another trap, and it was. It was. Um, and she pushed me and pushed me, so I engaged, and we had the conversation um, about a lot of things that she had done to me in the past. And some of it she vehemently denied. Oh, no, I couldn't do that. It wasn't me. And one of the things was with my first husband, who is a horrible, abusive, nasty person. We had been married about 3 or 4 years, and I needed a divorce. But about halfway through the divorce, I get called into my attorney's office, and he informs me that my ex husband, my mother, and my father showed up at his office, and they convinced him to drop my case, and that I was a no good, worthless whore who he couldn't believe that my husband wanted me back, or that my family would even have anything to do with me, with as horrible and terrible and worthless as I supposedly was. So the next day he called me to his office and informed me that he was going to keep the $1,200 that I had given him, which I could not afford to do without, but I needed the divorce, so I found it and I gave it to him. He was going to keep that, and I should be grateful that my family was forgiving and loving the way they were, and that he was going to no longer be my attorney. He could not represent someone like me, and that if I went forward with a divorce, that he would then take my husband's side. Well, that was one of the things that I confronted my mother with. And she vehemently, oh no, it wasn't me. I didn't do that. I would never do that to you. Come on. That attorney had lived in that town with my father and my mother for many years. I mean, my father's whole life. And my parents had been married um, 25, 20 to 27 years by that time. Um, he knew my parents very well. So, he, no, I know that he was telling me the truth, and I know that she was not because she's a narcissist. And narcissists don't tell the truth and they manipulate and they I'm sure she led the parade right down to his office and made sure that everything went the way she had planned it out to be. Anyway, um, because of that, I wound up staying with my abusive, hateful, nasty husband for another 10 years, 14 years in all. And every time I would say something about him being horrible, I would be reminded that I couldn't get a divorce, that it wasn't allowed, you know. Anyway, um, but God and the angels have reminded me that she did this out of love for me because I needed to go through these things. And I'll tell you, I did learn some very valuable lessons, very valuable lessons. Definitely to rely on myself and to take care of myself and to take care of my children and put myself and my children first. And I became very strong in my own skin because of that. Um, oh, I got off track there for a minute. Hell, my mother believes in hell. And after we had been there visiting her, I called her for Mother's Day, and she informed me that she didn't want me to call her anymore because she didn't want to go to hell. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, when you're around, I do things that aren't very nice." And she admitted that when I had been there to take the bed there, number one, she had confronted me and pushed me and lied to me. And number two, that she had contacted the rest of my family and lied to them and told them nasty things about me once again, like she always did, and that she couldn't allow that to keep happening. And the only way for her to stop doing that would be to put me out of her life. And she was convinced that the only way for her to avoid going to hell was to stop the abuse and stop the manipulation and stop the lies. So, okay. If you really think that's going to fix this, so okay. But when I stop and think about it, she believes in hell. And she believes that she is going there and she deserves to go there. I've had thoughts of contacting her and telling her that there is no hell, that we create our own scenarios, that she will only go to hell and suffer in whatever hell she creates because she has created it. That other than what she has created within and for herself, there is no hell and there is no suffering in her future unless she believes that she should. Um, so for a few days there, I vacillated back and forth. Um, should I contact her and inform her that there is no hell? Or should I just let the chips fall where they may, and let her determine for herself what her future holds. So, like I said, my uh, karma was detachment and not controlling other people and not worrying about other people and forcing other people. So the angels told me, no, do not contact her. She has her own path, she has her own things to learn here. And if she somehow creates a hell for herself, she will have to live with that. And there's, even if I did contact her, 99.9% chance that she's just going to think I'm full of it and she won't listen anyway. So it would be for my best and everybody's best that I just don't contact her. So I'm not. Um, but we create our own lives. We create them before we come here. We create them while we live here. And we create them before we die and go to any other place. Um, if we create a heaven for ourselves, that's where we will be. If we create a hell for ourselves, that too is where we will be. Here on earth, so many people complain that their lives are so terrible and so awful, and so caused this, and so caused that, and oh my gosh, feel sorry for me. This is horrible. And I realize that they choose to listen to other people. They choose to allow other people to dictate in their lives and steer things off a cliff. um, you can choose to say no. You can choose to take a different direction. You can choose whatever you want to choose. My husband and I now have chosen to live in peace and harmony, and that's how we live. Um, it hasn't been exactly easy to get to this point because we both had to change our thinking. We both had to change our frame of mind and our references, where what information we were drawing from. Um, that's what I mean by references. As we were growing up, I was taught that I was worthless, I was stupid, I'm fat and ugly and not worth anything. Um, my husband too was made to feel very poorly about himself. And in order to live in peace and harmony, we needed to change how we thought and felt about ourselves. We needed to love ourselves and care about ourselves enough to make the changes that would allow us to live in peace and harmony. Um, we, like so many people, are still having trouble with the wealth. um, I've been told that we supposedly can create this wealth. We can manifest the wealth, but it hasn't really happened. It hasn't happened, period. Um, you have to believe in it. You have to live it. You have to be able to manifest and create it. once you can overcome those obstacles, especially your references, your internal references to those things, then you can create the things and manifest the things that you want in your life. So many people fail to understand these simple lessons, and they fail to be grateful for the lessons they have learned. And I actually, a very long time ago, forgave my mother. I forgave my daughter. I forgave my father. Believe it or not, it was probably more difficult to forgive my father than it was to forgive my mother and my daughter, um, because I felt he should have protected us. He should have continued to love us, and he chose intentionally not to do that. So it was hard for me to forgive him, but I have forgiven him. Um, and with that comes peace and harmony and love and contentment. Like the angels have said to me before, if you want to live in heaven, you have to be heavenly. You have to live that way. You have to create that. That's how we have our heaven. That's how Carl and I have our harmony and our peace. We have created that, not just in our external world, but especially in our internal worlds. And it's very important. You have to create it within yourself. That's when you will truly have it. So I've gone on long enough now. Sorry about that. Um, but just food for thought. If you liked my content and you want to hear more, please subscribe and like and even comment. Ask me some questions. uh, Blessings, love, and light. Namaste. Love you. Have a wonderful day.